When a child is sexually assaulted in Tucson, there's a process in place. They're supposed to be interviewed by a forensics expert, but Kristi's kids has learned some cases aren't moving quickly. Kristi.
That's right, Steve. When TPD's child sex assault unit gets a case, it has to be reviewed and assigned before the child victim can be forensically interviewed. Tonight, Kristi's kids has two moms who say that those steps took way too long for their then 5-year-old children. My Kristi's kids investigation.
He seemed to take a lot of interest in my son. He was always throwing a football with him.
Jody Pius, her husband and son, took in a previous neighbor. They gave him room and board in exchange for babysitting, but over time they saw red flags and asked him to leave. This past spring, April 3rd, Jody's son started talking.
And that was where he proceeded to tell me that that the individual had touched him down there.
Kristi's kids got the initial police report, which Jody filed the next day.
I was told by the officer that responded to the call that my son would have a forensic interview.
They got a victim notification pamphlet, but the person who was supposed to assign their case was out of the office. Jody left messages. Meantime, her son still hadn't seen a counselor. 10 days after Jody's son first talked about the alleged crime, Jody got a call.
The person is back from their training vacation. Your case should be assigned soon.
But then nothing happened.
I gave up. I completely gave up.
It would be June 8th, more than 2 months after her son spoke up, before they'd get that forensic interview. The findings in a police report stated there was no disclosure of any sexual molestation, and it said the child was unable to articulate what happened. The case was closed.
They completely failed us. They completely failed us.
Jody's not alone. Lynn Mann tells Kristi's kids she and her husband also took someone in and later asked to leave. February 5th, her daughter came to her about her bedroom.
And then she said, well, I never wanted to sleep in there because that person kept on tickling my private.
Lynn filed a police report with TPD the next day and got a victim notification pamphlet, but her daughter's case wasn't reviewed for more than 2 weeks. February 23rd, Lynn was told TPD had a high volume of cases, but a detective had been assigned. And she was told,
because the person of interest was not currently residing with us, that our case just did not take priority.
Meaning there wasn't an immediate threat. Lynn wanted a forensic exam done on her daughter immediately,
and no medical examination whatsoever.
5 weeks after the report was filed with TPD, Lynn's daughter was forensically interviewed. The case was closed due to a lack of probable cause for arrest. Lynn believes the case was botched.
If the case was investigated properly from the start, I feel like we'd have a different outcome right now.
Kristi's kids asked TPD about the time lapses.
We have experienced a very large increase in the last couple of years of both incoming cases and the number of investigations that we've assigned.
According to TPD Assistant Police Chief John Levitt, detectives have to weigh all factors, case by case.
The most important thing for us is we triage these cases when they come in.
Priority 1, remove the threat, but neither suspect in these cases was still around the children.
While I know that these two people don't view us as being responsive in those cases, it isn't unusual for it to take a month to get a forensic interview started.
Tucson police investigate allegations, but it's the Southern Arizona Children's Advocacy Center that does the forensic interviewing. So we asked the center, what happens with a delay?
And we wait a couple of days, weeks, or longer, that child may have decided, okay, I'm not going to talk about this.
Center Director Kathy Rao is a former TPD commander. She tells Kristi's kids,
whatever is causing the delay in those decisions, then that needs to be addressed.
It's more than we would like.
Levitt admits the process isn't quick enough, but he says there's a lack of resources. The child sex assault unit has 1 supervisor and 6 detectives, and each detective averages 5 cases too many, with their caseload doubling in the last couple of years. The Pius and Mann children were prioritized in the pile.
We have 10 pots boiling and 8 lids. And we do our very best to make sure that those 8 lids are on the right pots to keep them from boiling over, and we do a pretty good job.
All right, keep in mind that child victims can't even see a counselor until that forensic interview is done. So these delays really put their healing in a holding pattern. Kristi's kids asked the mayor's office if more money should go to child sex assault cases. We didn't get a response. But City Councilman Steve Kozachik did respond, and he says he supports more staffing for units like this. But he says the police department is always focused on wages and benefits. We want to know what you think. Take our web poll at kvoa.com. Steve?